It has been roughly 1 week since 10.1.5. Augmentation Evokers, Mage Reworks, and a bunch of other changes have come to the live server. So what we're going to do today is take a bit of a meta snapshot and take a look at what's really powerful right now in World of Warcraft. Alright, so we're going to talk about two different things. We'll talk about Mythic Plus and then also, obviously, Raid. Before we get to that, I do want to say thanks a lot for everybody liking the videos. Videos have been doing really well recently on my channel, so keep liking everything. Liking videos for any content creator you watch is the best way to support them. Go down, like the thing, go back up, watch the video. Most free way to support us. Also, hit the subscribe button. So, what we're going to do here, I'm going to look at Mythic Plus, basically the last two Fortified Tyrannical weeks, so last week and the week before. So this is Mythic Plus in the plus 25 and up bracket, basically the week before. Last, so this is our very last fortified one, so Storming Bursting. Not this week, 2 weeks ago. And we can see here, the meta's pretty wide open back then. Shadow Priest obviously takes up a large chunk of the meta, but everything else after that is pretty balanced. You see a lot of Holy Paladins, you see a lot of Vengeance Demon Hunters, but there's still a decent representation of Prods and of Guardian. Nothing too crazy. Obviously, Vengeance was very strong. And then if we take a look down at last week's Tyrannical, again, pretty good mix. There's some bears, there's some Vengeance Druids. Nothing too crazy, nothing too out of the ordinary. But one thing did change recently, and that is the introduction of Augmentation Evoker. So if we look at this week, Fortified Storming Bursting, Fortified Volcanic Spiteful, we see something pretty telling right here. So right away, we see that almost every key has an Augmentation Evoker in it. And I actually looked through, and in the top 100 keys, there's roughly 6 keys, maybe 5 keys that don't have an Augmentation Evoker in it. And that is crazy. So the meta's pretty much kind of just, solidified around basically this comp right here. Guardian, Holy Paladin, Mage, either Frost or Fire. Really, both of them are strong. Augmentation and Shadow Priest. So Shadow Priest was absolutely busted. But then these 4 specs basically got reworks coming into this week. Where Bear is just the strongest tank by far now. Not really too close. You could run Vengeance for like magic damage, but Bear really is just insane. Holy Paladin is just out healing basically every healer right now by a large margin. They bring a ton of damage. They bring a lot of utility as well. They bring Kick, which is really useful in this triple range comp. And then you have Fire, Aug, and Shadow Priest. And this is just an insane comp. The Shadow Priest does a lot of damage. It gives PI to the Fire or Frost Mage. And both of them are buffed by the Augmentation Evoker. And it's crazy. Now, one other thing you can look at, if you look at Keystone level, see these are like 29s and 28s. Now, if we look to like a week ago or the very last Fortified week, this is the last Tyrannical week. 27 is the highest key. 26 after that. So 127 done. If we jump back to Fortified Storming Bursting, another pretty easy week, there's a good bit of 27s. See a lot of 27s there, and then we go down to depleted. So there's roughly 30 27s, and then nothing really above that. People are kind of capping out at the 27 rank. Now, if you look back at this week, these are 29s, and these are all 28s. So world first key levels are being done this week, and there's a lot of them. There's roughly 50 28s, 40 something 28s. So augmentation in dungeons is absolutely insane. It is crazy how strong it is. The damage, the strength it gives your healer, the strength it gives your tank, the utility it has. Basically, it's just +2, +3 keystone levels really free. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if over the next week or two we end up seeing a 30 done, which would be kind of crazy, especially at this point in the season. Normally 30s are done very late in expansions. They also added really high keystone scaling onto this season. This expansion. Where in the past, keystones would scale a little slower, but now they end up scaling much faster as you go up higher. So Augmentation Evoker coming in and just giving an absolutely crazy buff to a really strong DPS healing tank core. It's kind of crazy. Now, you do see Fire Mage or Frost and also Shadow Priest. Now, Fire and Frost are going to be nerfed on the reset by roughly 5%. Fire is doing some AoE capping. They're still going to be incredibly strong. Don't think for a second they won't be very strong. But should those not work out, Enhancement Shaman, incredibly strong, especially with Aug Evoker. Balanced Druid, incredibly strong, especially with Aug Evoker. Rogues are very strong. They're just not really good with Augmentation Evoker. But there's a lot of things you can see. But basically, for the foreseeable future for M+, Guardian Druid, Holy Paladin, Augie Evoker, and Shadow Priest is going to be your core comp. Probably with a Mage as the other DPS. Now, obviously, it could change. We'll see how the nerfs come in. I don't think they're too crazy. I do think this will be very strong, but a little bit worse. But Fire Mage, Frost Mage will still be very strong. So that's kind of just your core in M+ now. It's going to be not a great idea to stray from that. Like, look how just how overrepresented this comp is. It's kind of crazy. Comparing this to like a different week, right? We go back in our fortified week. Look how many different colors there are here. Obviously, tanks are a little more all purple, but you see a lot more purple, pink, and orange. But DPS comps are pretty open. You see a lot of mage, priest, elemental, shaman of some kind. You see rogue, priest, shaman. You see warriors. You see druids. You see some paladins up here. Pretty even DPS distribution. Now, we don't have this graph for this week. It doesn't exist yet. But the distribution was pretty solid across the board for DPS. For ranged, not too terrible. For tanks, pretty heavily dominated by two different ones. But when you look at the current week, things are just going to be absolutely dominated by these three. So in Raid, I don't think it's anywhere near too much of a story. Things are honestly pretty... Okay, so this is 10.1 before we jump into things. Things are pretty evenly balanced here towards the more upper end. Obviously, the upper end of things for these classes, much higher than these ones. But for the most part, things are pretty equal. The Death Knights and everything are really high. If you look at damage to bosses, again, there's some really high stuff up here for like Unholy and Arcane and stuff like that. But things aren't too insane. We'll look down at 95% percentile as well. Big jump for these three, but the rest of these guys aren't too crazy in terms of like everything total. Again, damage. These ones here are pretty equal. Again, a large jump up for these 5, but that happens. But at this point, it's pretty balanced. So we jump ahead to 10.1.5. Boom. I would say it's still pretty fine. Now, there are a few things. These outliers have gotten pretty high up there. And I will say, Augmentation Evoker, right now, vastly underrepresented on logs. The reason for that is a lot of things that logs can't attribute to it. Any pet damage from Demonology or Unholy, anything that stacks up over time in terms of damage, like Ignite, like Touch the Magi, like things from Ret Paladin with a hammer coming down. That can't be attributed correctly to logs. Things like crit. So I think Augie Evoker in range is overall fine. I do think how it interacts with Fire Mage, Demonology Warlock, and Unholy Death Knight is like insane. If you go over and look at parses, just here, it's all warlocks and everything. All warlocks and DKs. It's mages, warlocks, and one priest. Mages, warlocks, mages, DKs, warlocks, mages, DKs, warlocks, mages, one Evoker, DK, warlocks, mages, DK, one enhancement shaman, and then warlocks, DK, DK. So the top end in terms of parses are mostly skewed towards those three classes right now. But I think underneath that, we're honestly in a pretty good DPS kind of situation. The nerfed Evoker definitely dropped them down a bit. I do think the reworks to Mage is really strong. Obviously, Mage is going to get nerfed a bit in the upcoming patch. Fire Mage is getting nerfed. Probably worth it. But I do think Augmentation Evoker is much stronger than it's showing here because it can't attribute some things from these top logs. I think Augie Evoker is probably up towards the top. I think Augie Evoker is really strong. But in terms of meta for Raid, I think it's much better. Especially when you look at stuff like compared to how we were talking about in M+, where the meta is just super all over it. Like, this is so coalesced around this one comp, it's kind of insane. So meta for Raid, I do think is much better. Aug's very good, Mages are really good, Warlocks are really good, Death Knights are really good. But everything else is also like just solidly around one area there. We're on 75th percentile. Things even out even more. Is like an above average player. Then a 50 percentile. Things average out even more as well. Now, when you come down to 50th percentile, the thing with Augie Evoker too is that in a worse group, you're going to be doing worse with them. Fire Mage 50 percentile is definitely an outlier, but they are going to tune this one down, so wouldn't worry too much about that. Augie Evoker, I want to do a little interesting note because Augie Evoker does get worse the worse your group is, but in better groups, Augie Evoker will do better. So look at 99th percentile, Aug does start to climb. Now, again, these three classes here are being buffed by Augie Evoker, and it's not being able to attribute it down to the Evoker, so do keep that in mind. But I do think overall in Raid, things are pretty evenly balanced. There's some outliers up here, but some of them are being nerfed down, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. So in general, that's kind of the meta snapshot right now. In M+, oh my god, is that one thing busted? In Raid, things aren't too bad. So that's kind of where the meta is. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on how these things worked out. Do you think Augie Evoker was a mistake? Do you think it's way too powerful? I think it's really, really strong and probably could use a nerf. We'll see what happens with it though. But overall, I think Raid's balanced, M+ is not, but we'll see how the tuning changes come in. So that's it for today. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit a like, drop a comment as well, and hit the subscribe button. If you want to help me out, come to the channel number down below in the description. It would really help me out. With that, I'll catch you guys later. Peace. A big thank you to my channel members, 121, Payne, Zooligan, James, Evangel Faraz, Oxclamation, Brad Wisnack, It's Bulk, Flapjack67, and Angelo. Big, big, big shout out to all you guys. Really, really appreciate it. Your support means so much to me. If anyone else wants to become a channel member, get access to a ton of cool perks, including special stuff in my Discord, access to log review, VOD review, emotes during streams and on comments. And make sure you click the link below, follow it, become a channel member, help support me make some great content for you guys. Again, big thank you to you all, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.